store for you this afternoon. Let's meet some of the leading competitors in Formula One. Robert Holden on the GSX-R 1100 Suzuki already has been putting up superb times in the production races and could well be a threat even with the Formula One bikes. Craig Trinder of Australia had an excellent win yesterday in the last dying moments of the race. In a 21-lap race that should have been a 20-lap race, he dived under Gary Goodfellow. His brother Steve Trinder on the 1100 Suzuki. It's not, as you read there, the Honda RS 500. It is in fact a 1100 superbike. Richard Scott from New Zealand on the Honda RS 500, having brought it all the way from England in contention, managed to get up to third place yesterday but couldn't get with the leaders. Brian Morrison of Scotland on the Suzuki GSX-R 1100. Another who's gone well in the production races, Dale Robinson of Great Britain on the Suzuki GSX-R 750, the smaller brother of the 1100 machine. Another that we expect better things of today as he gets familiar with the circuit. Gary Goodfellow, the expatriate New Zealander, originally from Dunedin, on the Suzuki GSX-R 750 Superbike, American prepared. He's done very well in the American season. Hans-Peter Hermann of Germany has been somewhat disappointing thus far. Not a top racer in Germany, out here to learn the track and hasn't done all that well so far. Brent Jones stepping up from Formula 2 to the Yamaha TZ750, an enormously powerful machine which he's getting to grips with. He rode it at Pukekohe and he rode it yesterday and is back here with it again today and hoping for better things than yesterday.
Gosh, Brent Jones is really having a busy afternoon. Not only has he just won that Formula 2 race and then conducted a quick after-race interview, he was hustled straight from the interview to his TZ750, the Yamaha bike that he's going to ride in this Formula 1 race. Well, the question on everybody's lips now is, can Richard Scott get a good start and, in fact, show dominance over the two racers who really diced it yesterday in Formula 1, namely Trinder and Gary Goodfellow. Earlier this morning, Tony Palmer spoke to the man who came in second yesterday in Formula 1, the former Dunedin rider, now in Canada, Gary Goodfellow.
Gary, it was a 21-lap race rather than a 20-lap race yesterday, and it seems that you were a bit unfortunate because you were in the lead with 20 laps gone.
Yeah, that's right, Tony. My pit man signaled me 2 laps to go, and I looked back and I had a good, comfortable lead at that point and guided myself accordingly. And of course, when I got to the checkered flag, it was a white flag, so I circulated one more lap, really being really cautious, and of course Craig snuck in there. A nice move on his part, but I'll be making sure it doesn't happen again today.
A lot of people talking about this bike and how quick it goes. I saw you at Pukekohe last week and it was extraordinarily fast in a straight line. What's the story with the bike?
The bike is it's a 750 base bike. We've been developing it all year. It's not surprising to me that the bike's so fast with racing all year in the States. We were the top privateer team in the United States this year, running 5th in the US Pro-Am circuit, and we won the Canadian Superbike Championship on the bike also. So we've had a lot of time to develop the engine, and I got a super tuner, Peter Wiley, and it's been going good so far. We just got to work on the frame a little bit more, and that's working out good also. So we're looking forward to a super season.
You've had a fair amount.
That was the man who came in second in Formula 1 yesterday, Gary Goodfellow, now based in Canada. The race yesterday was won by the younger of the two Trinder brothers, Craig Trinder, and he, of course, is one of 2 Australians over here, his older brother, Steve. And these two races on their Suzuki 750s have been regular visitors to the New Zealand International Series in recent times. Tony Palmer spoke to the 2 brothers just as preparing for racing today.
Trinder, when you came here last year, young brother Craig here was on a learning curve, and you were, in some ways, the mentor. How much do you think he's learned?
Well, I haven't seen Craig race now for nearly 9 to 10 months because I've been in Canada. But his improvement is absolutely dramatic. I'm surprised, and I think he surprised everybody sitting here at this meeting today. I'm really impressed.
Do you think he might have improved since he got away from you?
Well, perhaps he has. You know, it's one thing following somebody, but when you haven't got him to follow, sometimes you go quicker.
Craig, an excellent win yesterday. Were you aware of the fact that it was a 21-lap race?
No, I only heard later about that sort of gear. So I went around and the white flag come out. That meant 1 to go to me. Wasn't counting.
A couple of stages in the race there where you looked to be riding 9.5, maybe 10 tenths, and getting a little untidy. Were you worried by that, or was it just adrenaline?
No, it wasn't adrenaline. It was basically lack of concentration. It was my own fault. I was out in front running around by myself, and it was totally my own fault. I started getting a little untidy. through lack of concentration. And when I ran off the track, I sort of gave myself a kick up the rear and said, let's go again. And when Gary was in front, in fact, I rode faster then when he was in front. So my own pace was just boring sort of thing.
After a little incident in the first race, what happened to you in the second race?
Well, I took off quite well. We jumped hard and a couple of guys fell off in front of me, which means I had to pull up to stop them colliding. And when I come back on, I was way out of contention anyway, Tony. So it wasn't worth pushing hard. They were too far gone.
How tight's the competition going to be between the two of you today?
Well, I think Craig, myself, is going to have an excellent chance. I believe he can go faster. We hope we've got our troubles sorted out, and I think we can push a lot faster ourselves.
What about you, Craig? How about the competition between the two of you today?
Yeah, well, as I think basically you can just say what Steve said. If he gets his suspension all sorted out, I don't think there'll be a problem. Obviously, there's nothing lacking in the riding ability, but there's still another handful of guys, at least 4 or 5, that are going to be right there for sure.
The Trinder brothers, one of whom still lives in Australia, one who has spent the year in Canada. And that's the points after one leg of Formula 1 racing. Craig Trinder with the win, 15 points. Gary Goodfellow on 12. He'll be looking to reverse that today. Richard Scott on 10. Brent Jones on 8. And Brian Morrison on 6. Lining up on the grid now, ready for a start. Robert Holden. Looking at the competition up front, and 1 or 2 of the leading riders still to come in. There's Brent Jones on the TZ 750, a bike that he's learning to ride and is getting quicker. Gary Goodfellow back there on the second row. Aaron Slight, Robbie Dean, Steve Trinder. Steve Trinder on the 1100 based bike. We won't call it a super bike. It's a modified 1100 based Suzuki, and younger brother Craig on this bike, which is a super bike, an American style 750 based Suzuki super bike. They're fairly equal in terms of performance around this circuit anyway. Steve, the older brother, seems to think that his would be faster on a longer circuit. Neither of them rode at Pukekohe in the rain, opting instead to sit in the stand and watch the opposition. Gary Goodfellow on the grey and pink machine there. Brent Jones is a man we'll watch a little closer today, and Richard Scott has geared down his bike a little so that he can get away from the start a little quicker. Going through the middle of them there was Paul Pavlitic, who's opted, I think, not to start. There's a problem with the bike. He's too late to get on that grid now. He'll be able to start off the back. They're away in the 20-lap leg 2 of the Pro Helmets Formula 1. Craig Trinder, Gary Goodfellow first of the first quarter.
And Gary Scott down in about 5th place. He's got quite a lot of work to do to catch the Suzukis in front of him.
So the production bikes once again getting away fairly quickly. Super bikes as well. Robert Holden right behind those 2 super bikes.
And at the moment, Scott back in 6th place, and these 3 getting away already.
Being a 20-lap race, there's a little bit of space in there to come through with the Grand Prix bikes. Here's Robbie Dean. Craig Trinder, Gary Goodfellow, Robert Holden is the order at the moment.
And Scott trying to battle his way through. He's up to 5th place, and he's really working hard on the 500 Honda as Trinder, Goodfellow and Holden lead. Scott now makes it through into 4th place.
So Richard Scott getting up to the leaders a little quicker than he did yesterday.
Richard won't be too keen to let these guys get away on him. He was a little bit caught out in the Formula 1 race at the end of the day yesterday. Tried to make a bit of ground, but there are a little too many back markers, and he had to be content with 3rd place in that race.
As we've seen from the production bike times earlier in the day, they're capable of similar times to the Grand Prix bikes, so Richard Scott is really going to have to go to catch them.
And now with a larger rear sprocket, it's made the 500 Honda even livelier out of the corners. You can see it pouring the air front wheel off the ground, almost coming out of every turn. But it does mean it jumps out of the corners better. But it's still Craig Trinder who leads from Gary Goodfellow and Robert Holden. The 2 750 Superbikes leading the 1100cc production bike. Then the 500cc Grand Prix bike in behind.
Robbie Dean coming through. Scotty still in 3rd place.
And that's a mistake from Craig Trinder. Lets Goodfellow into the lead. Trinder ran wide, and now Goodfellow has the lead.
Goodfellow, Trinder, Robert Holden. Holden challenging Craig Trinder. And Richard Scott getting some advantage from the change of order up front. Coming through now on them. It's one thing to catch them, it's another to get by them. Very wide line from Richard Scott there on the Grand Prix bike.
Now, Joanne, am I right in thinking that Robert got slicks on the first time this weekend?
Yes, that's right, Peter. We haven't tried the slicks on this bike at the moment. It can develop a whole series of different handling characteristics, but it seems to be working quite well for him at the moment. Looking now for a time on Richard Scott, who's closing on this bunch fairly rapidly, and we have him at a 51.4, so he's not hanging around.
51.4 is excellent race time. Very, very fast pace early on. Gary Goodfellow, Craig Trinder, Robin Holden, Richard Scott is the order.
And just as he admitted yesterday, Trinder made the mistake with a clear road in front of him, perhaps another loss of concentration. He's now got his work cut out because Goodfellow leads. Trinder behind, but Holden looking for a way through. Surely he's going to make his play up as we get down to the garden here. Scott looking for an inside line. He tries to pass Holden, but Holden tries to go around Trinder. And in fact, they all stay where they are, with Goodfellow leading Trinder, Holden and Scott.
Richard Scott has made up that distance now. He's on their tails. Whether or not he can get by remains to be seen. Having a look at getting by Robert Holden there. Almost did it. Who comes out in front?
He stuffed it under Holden going into the bridge. A really pretty tricky manoeuvres. Trinder looks for an inside line, and Goodfellow and does it. He made some space where there wasn't, and luckily Goodfellow gave him a little bit of room, and in fact Goodfellow ducked back and nearly let Scott past as well.
This is super racing. A 20-lap Formula One race, and you normally expect that the lead man will get out and form a procession. The order swapping here, as has been the case all during yesterday and this morning.
And now Scott looking for a passing manoeuvre on Goodfellow. Goodfellow moves across, cramps his style, and Scott has to back off. Goodfellow just moved across in front of him, and there was nothing that Scotty could do.
He lost a little bit of ground there, Richard Scott. Robert Holden back behind him in fourth place now, trying to hang on to Scott's tail. Craig Trinder getting some advantage, pulling away just a little bit in the lead. Gary Goodfellow second, Scott third, Holden fourth.
And Goodfellow thought, well, I'm not. And there we see Brent Jones. He's down in fifth place on the 750 Yamaha.
Yeah, Brent Jones has taken a while to get through. He's just got past Robbie Dean, and that was the last person he had to get past to get in touch with this front bunch. And look at how quickly he's pulled away from Dean, having got by him.
And now we're back with the leaders. Still Craig Trinder ahead of Gary Goodfellow. Scott looking for any way past, and will he try the same manoeuvre up at the Rose Garden, which had Goodfellow squeeze him out last time? This time Scott tries to the outside line, and the big driving manoeuvre up to the next corner. It's the same manoeuvre that Trinder pulled on Goodfellow in the race last year, and he made yesterday, and he makes it.
And it looks like we have Scotty up into second place here. He's really desperate. He's trying every which way but loose to get right up into the lead so that he's in a good place when they start coming across the back markers, which won't be too long from now.
Well, we've seen some pretty intense racing over the years at Wanganui, but I've never seen anything like this out in front. A four-way challenge for the lead with 14 laps remaining in the race. This is superb.
Craig Trinder's got a fairly hard job here. This is only the guy's third year in racing. There's a lot of experience, a lot of miles behind him. He's setting the pace, and these guys are going to put a lot of pressure underneath him.
Despite what Craig Trinder said earlier, I thought yesterday he was riding at least 9/10 and looking a little untidy.
And now Scott, that very accentuated wide line that gives him the drive out of the flat bed and squirts it past into the lead. A great manoeuvre from Scott, real thinking riding from the local Wanganui boy, puts him into the lead ahead of Craig Trinder.
Lovely piece of riding. Richard Scott has really done everything. After yesterday, he was quite disappointed, and a much more determined rider this morning. And he's come out and shown them. Starting off at about fifth place, this is how he did it.
A much higher corner speed and a really good drive, just slingshotted him past the 750 Suzuki.
I'm sure Craig Trinder didn't know he was coming by then, because Trinder thought that he had the corner first and was into it. Richard Scott taking a much wider line and exiting the corner at a greater speed.
And now for the first time, Scott with a completely clear road in front of him can make his own lines, pick where he goes on the circuit to suit the riding style and the motorcycle.
Robert Holden keeping the Superbikes and the Grand Prix bikes honest there on his 1100.
Richard Scott, Craig Trinder, Gary Goodfellow, Robert Holden.
And as Joanne pointed out, Scotty's done it just in time, because there's the first of the back markers, Hans-Peter Hermann being lapped.
Now Brent Jones is making up ground quite quickly too. He got a particularly bad start and came through the field. Back in fifth place.
Richard Scott, lap timed at 50.63 on the lap where he had a clear track there.
50.63. Well and truly under the lap record. Well, we've said that this RS 500 Honda that Richard Scott is on is the fastest bike that has ever been in New Zealand. Grand Prix bike. I think he's proved the point today. His lap times are quicker than they were yesterday, and Richard Scott is riding as hard as we've ever seen him ride.
And it's really good thinking from Scotty, because you can see him riding the motorcycle completely differently to the chaps on the production and superbikes, using every inch of road, really wide accentuated lines, high corner speed, because the bike doesn't stop, turn and squirt the same as a superbike does. It's a Grand Prix bike. It's meant for fast open corners, and it's a very tight circuit at Wanganui here that Scotty's making as fast and as open as humanly possible.
Getting down low as he leans in over the railway lines to the entry to that S section. Still Craig Trinder holding off Gary Goodfellow and Robert Holden in second, third, fourth. That's a good dice. But Richard Scott able to pull away just a little now as he gets through the traffic. He's going to have the advantage being the first man onto the traffic. There's Brent Jones. Just have a look at the gap this time. Brent Jones comes over the bridge as the others get into the right-hander at the end of the front straight. Brent Jones is definitely making up time. He's probably running out of time to be able to do it. A particularly slow start. But he's not far away now from catching that bunch. I doubt that he's going to have enough time to do anything about it when he gets to them, but he's making up ground on them very quickly. Craig Trinder in second, Gary Goodfellow third, Robert Holden fourth.
And now they're well and truly in amongst the back markers, and Richard Scott's wide racing lines are spoilt once more, and it's a chance for the superbikes to get back up on terms. Even though Scotty's coming across the back markers first, I don't think his bike is as well suited to passing them as the Suzuki four-cylinder, four strokes behind him. And certainly it looks as though Craig Trinder's making use of the opportunity to make up a bit of ground.
And I think the traffic has proved the problem also for Brent Jones. On the last lap, he slipped back substantially, a good 15, 20 metres. So all the hard work he had done in trying to catch this bunch seems to have gone out the window. Richard Scott, Craig Trinder, Gary Goodfellow, Robert Holden behind him.
And Holden looking for a way past Goodfellow. He's going to try that wider line and a squirt out past the traffic island, but the 1100 production bike doesn't appear to have the same grunt as the very special 750 superbike in front of it.
It's a pretty amazing ride from anybody on a production bike in this company. An indication of how competitive a good man on a production bike can be.
And Joanne, are you seeing another quick time from Scotty?
50.82 that time on Richard Scott. He's really operating on the main jet. He's a pleasure to watch around here. It's an excellent ride last year on the FZ Superbike. A little bit of consternation yesterday morning because this RS 500 is so different. He's obviously come to grips with it quite well. He's poetry in motion to watch. Classical lines.
Yeah, just looking at how smoothly he's riding, it's almost believable you can get under 50 seconds with a clear track. But of course, there's a little much traffic around there today. 50.6, the quickest time we have on him so far. And that is phenomenally fast around here.
And we really are privileged here at Wanganui to be watching Scott on this first-class Grand Prix machine. This is the sort of thing that I'm lucky enough to watch all season in Europe. The best racing machinery, finely tuned, being ridden extraordinarily well.
And that fifth spot that we were keeping an eye on with Brent Jones is now a big margin back. He's obviously had a lot of trouble getting through the traffic. There is Brent Jones on the TZ750 Yamaha.
And it looked to me as though we saw Gary Goodfellow's bike parked there. I wonder if Goodfellow is out of this race. Yes, that's Goodfellow's bike being wheeled off. At a quickest glance, it doesn't look as though it's being crashed. It could have slipped off in a course, or it may be a mechanical fault. But that's Goodfellow out of the race. So that means Scott now leads from Trinder, and there's a clear margin before we look back to see Robert Holden in third place. And Goodfellow walking away with a slight limp. Perhaps he did slip off. Yes, he's definitely got a limp there, so Goodfellow stepped off the 750 Suzuki.
Gary was coming under a fair pressure from Robert Holden on the production bike there, Peter, so maybe he just overcooked it at one particular part of the track. He looked to be riding fairly loose.
But lucky to see him not substantially hurt as Scott carries on his winning way, keeping ahead of Craig Trinder.
This is an excellent ride again from Craig, strutting the stuff that he showed so well for us yesterday. He's not giving an inch here, riding the wheels off this bike.
And he's keeping the pressure on, so although Scott has the slightest advantage, he can't afford to let up. And if they come upon any back markers and Scott gets balked only for a second, or he makes the minutest mistake, Trinder will be right on his tail again.
Robert Holden still holding down that third place, but this is a substantial margin now between second and third. Richard Scott and Craig Trinder together. There's Robert Holden.
And it looks, if anything, that Scott is being caught by Trinder. There really isn't an awful lot in it. Yes, I think Trinder's catching him. Really, the Suzuki shaking its head as Trinder tries everything he knows to get on terms with the lighter Grand Prix bike in front.
Scott has indeed dropped his pace off a little to mid-51s. No doubt that he knows that Craig Trinder's there.
But Trinder made a mistake there. He tried to be too desperate on the brakes, missed the gear going into the traffic island, and I'm sure he's dropped 5 or 10 yards on Scott in that manoeuvre. He's obviously trying perhaps a little too hard, and it just made him force an error.
I wonder, Joanne, if that time of 50.6 that we got on Richard Scott was an indication of that's how fast he can go if he needs to, and perhaps he's just dropped it off a little to see what the opposition can do in reply.
It's fairly well-known GP logic, Tony, to run the race as slowly as you can. He knows that Craig's there. He's obviously got a little extra up his sleeve. He's in the right place. There's a lot of traffic out there now coming across back markers. The white lines, classical lines, and with the tape on this GP bike means that he doesn't have a lot of room to be able to go, and he's in the right place to be able to pick his own lines without having to worry about making up 1 or 2 places before the last lap.
And it just shows what the differential of speed there as Scott goes past Hans-Peter Hermann for the second time in this race.
Richard Scott on his home turf at Wanganui. Down past the start-finish line again with 3 laps to go. Craig Trinder, Robert Holden, second and third. Somebody else down at the bridge, waiting for the rest of the field to come through and looking back for that gap of 4th place, which we imagine is still Brent Jones. It's a huge gap.
Yes, it's a difficult thing for Jones. He's got nobody to chase in front of him. He's way out on his own. And now Scott negotiates the Harley-Davidson.
Lindsay Williamson from Christchurch Motorcycles.
Then again, that shows that's Lindsay going very well, actually. That's the first time we've seen Lindsay lapped in this race, and he's obviously keeping the power on the Harley. But Scott on the Grand Prix 500 way out in front on letter A from Trinder. Now Trinder once more coming under pressure from Robert Holden.
I wonder if Craig Trinder is having the same problem as he had yesterday with little lapses in concentration. He at times looks exceptionally smooth and at other times looks a little loose.
It's the problem with Wanganui, that the harder you try, the slower you can end up going, with little mistakes costing you dear. And certainly Trinder, we did say, make one self-inflicted error, and Holden now really right on his tail, and I wonder if Trinder knows he's there.
Robert Holden will be loving this.
He's having a ball on that bike. This is the first time they've run slicks on it. It seems to be coping with the conditions really well.
As you say, Joanne, the stiffer construction slicks can obviously create havoc with the suspension, but if we can just guess, it doesn't seem to be causing Robert too many problems, and he's giving Craig Trinder a hard time now as we see Scott go on to the final lap on the 500 Honda.
So Richard Scott only needing to stay upright really to win this race. His lead fairly well protected at the moment. Craig Trinder tried to challenge a couple of laps ago to put the pressure on Richard Scott. He made a mistake and let Scott get away again. Here's Trinder behind him. But it's going to be a win for Richard Scott in his own backyard at Wanganui, his hometown. He used to ride here years ago on motocross bikes. Shocked a lot of people with his skill and ability. Craig Trinder looking very much like second place, and it's perhaps a little late for Robert Holden to attempt anything on Craig Trinder unless he has a lapse of concentration. Over the bridge for the last time for Richard Scott.
What an exciting Formula One race, and a huge big wheelie for Craig Trinder all the way down the front straight, and he got beaten, I think, on the line.
That nearly cost Craig Trinder second place. I think we'll have to confirm that with the lap scorers.
But
Well, the way I looked at it out the window, it looked to me as though Craig Trinder doing a wheelie for the crowd down the front street got beaten by Robert Holden.
He certainly didn't realise that Robert Holden was there, and we flash back now to see the fourth place man, Brent Jones. A nice, smooth, calculated ride on the 750 Yamaha from a very, very bad start that gives him a well-earned fourth place.
He's going to be in the points. Brent Jones getting to grips with that TZ750 Yamaha, a difficult bike to learn to ride. And when he gets down to his home track at Ruapuna next week, we imagine that he'll be considerably more competitive than he has been here. We'll have to wait for confirmation of that result, but the way I saw it, looking out the window here, it looked to me in the finish as though second place went to Robert Holden. Look at the smooth style of Richard Scott. That really is a demonstration of how to ride a Grand Prix bike around a street circuit. Having to take wide lines, having to come from 6th place initially from the start. The Grand Prix bike not as quick off the mark as the production or the super bikes. Riding around on that last lap, having a quick look, seeing that his margin was relatively safe from Craig Trinder. Around and over the bridge for the last time for Richard Scott. Pulled a little wheelie off the top of here. There's the power. Craig Trinder behind him. Now have a look at Craig Trinder pulling the big wheelie for the crowd all the way down that front straight. And as he did, Robert Holden coming right up behind him. Now let's just look at it on the line. Now I think Robert Holden got second in that. We'll await official confirmation of places, but it certainly looked to me as if Holden just got there on the line. I know Craig Trinder didn't expect that he'd be there that close.
All right, we'll talk about second and third in just a moment, and Robert Holden and Craig Trinder are having a bit of byplay behind me. But here's the winner, no doubt about that, Richard Scott. Richard, congratulations. After yesterday's disappointment, I suppose today was really what you're after.
Yeah, I was pretty disappointed yesterday. Like coming back to Wanganui, there's sort of everyone I know is here. I feel as though I want to do well.
Well, you got third in the points race yesterday after running into some back market traffic, I understand. But today, really, not much question about it. After you'd had a slow start again, you're back in 4th or 5th place.
Yeah, I have a bit of trouble getting away on this. Against the 4-strokes, they can sort of rev up and let go a lot better. But we made a few changes overnight, and it's a lot better.
So what sort of changes have you made overnight to make this machine a bit faster?
Just mostly suspension and gearing changes. We haven't touched the engine or anything. It's just, you know, in view of traffic, so we can get through it a bit better.
All right, well, we've been told, you've told us that this is perhaps the fastest racing machine ever to be in New Zealand. Do you think now that you've confirmed that and that you will confirm that for the rest of the series?
Well, I hope so, but you know, I feel these guys are going pretty quick, and you know, I think we can keep doing it.
Richard Scott, we look forward to seeing you in the remainder of the series. Well raced in this leg of Formula One. Now let's go into this battle for second and third. Craig Trinder and Robert Holden. Now, the Aussie here reckons he's got it, but I think, Robert Holden, you may have just sneaked him on the line, didn't you?
Yes, I did. I got him by about half a bike length.
This is the show-off Aussie, is it?
Give him a go.
What do you say, Craig? Just Aussie being a bit overconfident, typical Ocker, is it, or not?
Well, I tell you, my guys gave me a 2-second buffer on the last lap, and I thought, now yesterday...
He didn't put the hand over the 2 when I came right behind you on the last lap.
He's lying. I'll tell you what happened. You guys said yesterday you want to see wheelies. I give you a wheelie and look what happens.
It's an old New Zealand trick, you see. We like to con these Australians. Robert Holden, well done. Do you think perhaps you're going to be competitive for the RS 500 as a production bike?
Well, I think so. Like, we're running a street tyre on the front and a slick on the back. If I can get a slick on the front for the next one, because I'm losing the front end a lot under brakes, I reckon I can give them all a real good run.
What do you say, Craig?
Well, I ain't doing wheelies anymore, that's what I say.
Well done. Thanks very much. Robert Holden second, Craig Trinder third. No doubt about the winner, though.
We're not sure.
We say we're sure. No doubt about Richard Scott of Wanganui. He was first. Let's go to Tony Palmer now to confirm the official results.
One of the enjoyable things, Peter, about doing motorcycle racing is the good humour that exists even between the hottest of competitors. Richard Scott, Robert Holden, Craig Trinder is the way we saw it. We will confirm that a little later on for you, but Richard Scott on the RS 500, the winner, doing a substantially under record lap time. Robert Holden on the Suzuki GSX 1100 production bike, and then Craig Trinder on the 750 Superbike. We'll be back with Suzuki Masters after this break.
The Philippines.
Right, and from Wanganui, it's now been confirmed as official. Richard Scott, the winner of that leg of Formula One. Second was Robert Holden, just getting it on the line over the effervescent Australian Craig Trinder, who perhaps was guilty of showing off just a little and paying the price for it. But certainly good fun from those Australian riders, the two Trinder brothers and Craig Trinder, the winner yesterday of Formula One here at Wanganui, coming in third place today, being pipped on the line by Robert Holden. Well, that's Formula One for the moment. We'll have more Formula One racing for you at about 25 to 5 this afternoon. In the meantime, though, we turn our attention to Suzuki Masters, with every rider in these races riding on Suzuki machines. The dominant rider yesterday was Bob Toomey, and earlier this morning, Tony Palmer spoke to yesterday's winner.
Bob, there's somebody credited you with a time of 51.8 around here on a production bike. Does that surprise you?
Well, I haven't been taking times over the last couple of years, but the way the bikes are handling, the way these bikes go now, I suppose it's really just a credit to the bikes.
That's as quick as Formula One bikes, though. Do you think it's a realistic time?
It's hard to say. I spoke to a couple of chaps that took the times, and two of them said that they got the same time. But it could have been a mistake, but the times we were doing yesterday were sort of low 52s. I know that for a fact, but it's hard to tell.
This is Suzuki Masters, obviously an intense competition. How much does it mean to you?
A race really is just like another race. That was an intense race, and there'll be some more today, I'm sure.
After having a little bit of time off with injury, you've really come back with a vengeance. Do you feel happier in yourself the way you're riding?
Yeah, well, the injury that I had was going back about 3 years ago now, but I think that's well in the past, and I've had a couple of seasons away from that with no injury, and I'm happy the way things are going.
Do you feel that you're actually riding better than you have before?
I think I am. Each year I seem to improve a small amount, and I'm happy the way I'm riding now.
Who's the major opposition for Suzuki Masters today?
Well, as we saw yesterday, obviously Robert, and I think Morrison will be a threat as well. He's certainly shaping up well for his first ride here.
How difficult is it riding around there with people like Robert Holden that you've ridden alongside many times before? Can you go as close as you like and it's not a worry?
Yeah, we're used to each other's riding, so we generally don't give each other an inch, but we're aware of that fact and we just ride accordingly.
That was the man who very narrowly yesterday beat Robert Holden in the first leg of Suzuki Masters. And now let's check the points after the first race yesterday. This competition is being raced in two classes. First of all, for the major 1100cc Suzuki machines, Bob Toomey over Robert Holden, who's got 12 points. Alan Ramage came in third yesterday with his machine, so he's on 10 points. In fourth place after leg one, Robbie Dean, and in fifth place, the visitor from Scotland, Brian Morrison. For the smaller machines, the 750 machines, Philip Payne won yesterday's class in the smaller Suzuki machines, Simon Crafar, Jason McEwen and Dave Hicks. So that was the situation after leg one yesterday. Now let's go to recorded action from leg two of the Suzuki Masters, raced earlier today here at the Cemetery Circuit in Wanganui, and we'll go to commentators Tony Palmer and Joanne Holden.
10 laps of the Suzuki Masters, leg two. Another excellent field. Bob Toomey and Robert Holden look to be the favourites again. Bob Toomey riding better than he ever has before. Obviously in excellent form. Robert Holden will want a better performance today. That sprint to the first corner. That's Brian Morrison, the Scot, into the first corner first. Robert Holden behind him. Bob Toomey behind him in third place. They form themselves up. Terry Fitzgerald up there in fourth place. The youngster from Taranaki. Brian Morrison has got to the lead. Well, he spent yesterday learning the circuit. He's a top production road racer from Scotland and has had some experience on this bike, perhaps more on the current motorcycle than the top New Zealanders. But that looks like a real battle. It's a sprint race being 10 laps, and Joanne, I think we got quite an interesting race shaping up here.
Yes, I think they're taking it fairly quietly for the moment here, Tony. Just give the bike a couple of laps to warm the tyres up, get the riders used to it. This is their first ride for the day. Conditions looking a little overcast, but the track's still fairly warm. Looking for a slightly better performance for Robert Holden today, who's a little more on form. But looking now to Bob Toomey in third, who's not letting them out of their sights for one moment.
Worth remembering that when you get to this level of road racing on machines this powerful, the mental state of the rider does make an enormous difference. Robert Holden wasn't quite himself yesterday. Bob Toomey really has come into his own in the last couple of months. But this is Brian Morrison, the Scot, who's leading them round. Going to be hard to get past. And once again, I think we're going to see the same as yesterday, where the dicing is all up front. Most unusual on a street circuit like this, but wonderful to see. Robbie Dean in 4th place. And Terry Fitzgerald is 5th still. Robbie Dean dropping off this front 3 just a little. It's Robert Holden challenging Brian Morrison. All 3 in the front there on GSX 1100Rs, which have more horsepower than they did last year. Seems to be the way with motorcycles. Each year they get quicker and more powerful. You'll notice as they get going a bit, when they get into their stride, that they get power slides coming out of corners, such as the acceleration. Still Morrison, Holden, Toomey. Robert Holden still using the wider lines in the entry to corners.
Robert looking for the narrow line, and it's worked out to be quite successful. Robert in the lead now. Brian Morrison from Scotland 2nd, and Bob Toomey is very close forward, 3rd.
Still Robbie Dean in 4th place, and Terry Fitzgerald in 5th place. This is where the race is, up front. It's extraordinary, but it's excellent to see. The dicing right up front. 3 superb riders on big production bikes. Each of them very experienced, as is the man in 4th place, Robbie Dean. Brian Morrison has got to grips with this circuit very, very quickly for an overseas rider. He's got sandwiched between the Wellington Motorcycles team of Robert Holden and Bob Toomey, New Zealand's best big bike production riders.
The bikes these guys are on, all the first 4 or 5 front runners, is the GSX R1100, which is Suzuki's latest contribution to the new generation of sports motorcycle, aimed basically at the serious sports and touring-oriented riders.
I think, Joanne, the separation between what were production bikes and what are racing bikes is getting smaller and smaller.
They are. Suzuki have taken a good, strong look at their bikes. These have been redesigned from the bottom up. The features of these bikes are the fairly lightweight aluminium box section frame, completely redesigned oil-cooled motor, which keeps them fairly light. Feature a steering damper on the front end, remote reservoir oil shock on the rear. These are developing somewhere in the vicinity of 130 brake horsepower, which compares to your family laser of 70 or 80 brake horsepower. Top speed, they're capable of about 260, 270 kilometres an hour. Around this circuit, maximum speeds at about 150 kilometres.
Joanne, this is interesting because yesterday Bob Toomey was credited with a high 51-second time. We've just had an official step in the commentary box and tell us that Robert Holden is doing 51.33. Now that is extraordinarily fast for production.
This is a full credit to a bike that you can actually buy off the showroom floor. 2 years ago at Wanganui, we saw Robert Holden riding a monocoque frame bike that had a factory Yoshimura motor in it. This was built in Japan, one of only 10 that was used for the World Formula 1 Championships. Now his lap record at this time, Tony, was 52.4. He's already gone under a second on this, on a standard production bike, on standard production tyres. It's really a credit to this motorcycle.
Now, Joe, we were standing around the pits saying that 51.8 or 51.6 for a production bike really couldn't have been true because it wasn't official, and although 3 timers had it, it just seemed unrealistic. But here we have it proved beyond any doubt. 51.33. That is an extraordinarily fast time for a production bike.
It's a categorical statement of what these bikes have been built for, Tony. A serious sports touring motorcycle. Full credit to Suzuki for what they've made.
Just to put that in perspective, the Formula 1 bikes yesterday were around the same times in the race. Purpose-built race bikes. Still Holden from Morrison from Toomey, and the gap's starting to open just a little now. Robert Holden pulling away slightly. There's Terry Fitzgerald.
39 is Tony McMurdo from Wellington. We don't see him too much in the front. This is his 3rd season of road racing.
And 45 is Alan Ramage, who had a good day yesterday as well. Always a good starter. But they're quite a ways back from our race leaders. That top group of 3 with Robbie Dean behind him in 4th place. That's Tony McMurdo, the colour-coordinated boots and helmet. And here's the race leader, Robert Holden. Brian Morrison right behind him. 3 laps to go now. It's getting late for a challenge.
These two riders look fairly comfortable out there, Tony. I think Robert's got the race fairly much in control, although Brian Morrison's certainly not letting him get away, and he'll be looking for an opening there in the last closing stages of the race.
I think this is Robert Holden back to his very best and leaving Bob Toomey just slightly behind them, whereas yesterday it was dicing wheel and wheel right to the end and Bob Toomey getting the win.
Robert had a few tyre problems yesterday, Tony. He's now got the luxury of a brand new tyre on the rear, and obviously making advantage of it.
I noticed him in the pits bolting one on this morning. He's got it scrubbed in nicely, obviously working well for him.
This bike's working really nicely. He's got no suspension, tyre adhesion, any sort of problems. He looks like he's having a really good time out there.
They'll get the white flag next time round. Robert Holden still leading the Scot, Brian Morrison, and New Zealand's Bob Toomey behind him. In fact, these two, Holden and Morrison, have cleared out just a little from Bob Toomey, who was right on Morrison's tail. Getting through the back markers now. And this is where experience shows, getting through the traffic. The first man to come on the traffic has the advantage because the slower riders that he's about to pass don't know he's there. And so they don't react and get a fright and move over on him. Whereas those in 2nd, 3rd, 4th places when they're coming through, perhaps the back markers are expecting them to come through and they tend to get in the way when they're trying to get out of the way.
Morrison looking to keep on holding on us through here. Robert knows he's there, knows that he's got to be very defensive about his riding on this last lap. Going up through the railway lines, wide into the S's here. Robert will be looking for the fastest line and exit out of here as possible. Look out for Morrison. He'll look for the narrow line coming down to the Rose Garden here. Staying wide, staying wide.
Just catching a glimpse of Robert there. He looks to be enjoying it thoroughly.
He's having a good time.
Round for the checkered flag this time. Robert Holden still holding off Brian Morrison.
It's going to be a fairly close finish, I think, Tony. Close over the bridge.
Comes down to a sprint down the line as they come down in front of us. Looking at that sprint, Robert Holden just holding off Brian Morrison of Scotland. Bob Toomey coming through in 3rd place. Looking back for 4th place. And it is Robbie Dean in 4th place. And 5th place, a battle between Terry Fitzgerald and Alan Ramage. 5th and 6th respectively. Tony McMurdo in 7th place. Robert Holden just showing a little bit of the joy of winning a race after having a day that didn't really suit him too well yesterday. He wasn't feeling himself. He had some minor problems with a tyre that was getting a little worn. He bolted a new one on this morning, and he has ridden superbly. Really had the control of the race from the moment he got in front.
Full credit also to Brian Morrison here, Tony. This guy's only been racing for 4 seasons. It's only his 1st season on the 1100. He's never been to Wanganui before, and he's come to grips with the circuit really well. This guy's the Scottish Formula production champion. He's been riding his 1100 over there all year, and he's also raced several races in England, where he's mixed it with the best of British riders such as Phil Mellor and Trevor Nation.
To give you an indication of times, the best time yesterday from Craig Trinder in a Formula 1 race on a superbike, 51.15 was the best official time, 51.11 as the unofficial time. And here we have big production bikes and Robert Holden circulating 51.33, the best time in that race. So very, very little between the purpose-built racing bikes and these big production bikes, which have become so powerful now, so good at acceleration, and they handle and stop so well that on a circuit that's tight like this one at Wanganui, they are the equivalent of a Formula 1 or a Grand Prix bike. Of course, if you went to a circuit like Pukekohe, it would be a different story. Robert Holden, the winner from New Zealand on the Suzuki GSX-R 1100.
Robert Holden, yesterday you were narrowly beaten in the Suzuki Masters. That looked a fairly comfortable win there today once you took over the lead at about, what, the 3-lap mark?
Yeah, I feel a lot better today. Yesterday I had a fairly old tyre and I've only got one tyre, so I kept it for today for the important races. and I felt much better out there that time, and I rode a little bit smoother than I did yesterday, and the times were a lot better.
The Scotsman was never far behind you the whole way, but did you feel as if you were always in control?
Yeah, I knew he was there. Like, I looked around once or twice, I could see him right behind me, but I had things fairly well under control. I didn't think there was anywhere where he could have passed me, so I just kept my head and just kept going.
We're told, Robert, that you were timed at 51.33 during a lap around there during that race, which is only about 0.2 of a second slower than the likes of Scott and Trinder were doing yesterday.
Yeah, well, I'm quite pleased with that. I've got some slick tyres to put on this for the Formula 1 race, and I reckon that'll knock maybe 2 or 3 tenths off, so I think I can run with them in the Formula 1 race, no problem.
All right, Robert Holden, thanks very much, and good luck for the rest of the program. We'll move over to the man who came in second in the Suzuki Masters, a visitor from Scotland. You were always just behind Brian, but never quite able to make a challenge at Robert Holden, perhaps.
Yeah, Robert took over the running sort of early in the race, and I thought I'd be able to stick on his tail, and I was kind of hoping for maybe some more traffic on the last few laps to get a bit closer and maybe have a chance of passing him, but it didn't quite work out that way.
All right, Brian, you've had a third and a second in this series so far. Do you think you've got the firepower to get up and win one?
Yeah, I think it's possible anyway. Just a bit of luck maybe at the start, we'll be there somewhere.
Brian, good luck. Thanks very much for talking to us.
Thank you.
Now it's back to Tony Palmer for the final results of the Suzuki Masters Leg 2.
Aye, and a great race there from Brian Morrison. He said this morning that he didn't like us giving him a hard time about the rain because he said it rains less in Scotland than it does here. Robert Holden, the winner officially on the Suzuki GSXR 1100. Brian Morrison from Scotland on a similar bike in second place. 1, 2 and 3 for Suzuki GSXR 1100s. Bob Toomey coming in third, and that result is official now. And the time credited to Robert Holden, 51.33. Absolutely superb. And the timekeepers I know up here got a lot of flack yesterday because there was a time that they had given to Bob Toomey yesterday of 51.6 and another of 51.8. And they were absolutely rubbished for those times being unrealistic. I think the point has been proved today that these production bikes are capable of those times.
Leg 3 of Suzuki Masters coming up live for you in just a moment, and here's the situation after 2 legs with Robert Holden, a second place yesterday, a win today, and a total of 27 points over Bob Toomey, who won yesterday and was third today. Morrison is third on 18 points. Robbie Dean, 2 very consistent races from him. 2 fourth placings have taken him to 4th place overall and 16 points. And Alan Ramage, who was third yesterday, finished in 6th place today. So that's 15 points for Alan Ramage, and 5th place after 2 races in the Suzuki Masters leg, after 2 legs in the Suzuki Masters series. All right, coming up in just a moment, leg 3 coming for you live from the cemetery circuit here in the river city of Wanganui. Before we go to the race, though, let's hear more from the series leader, Robert Holden. Not so much about his racing style or about his bike, but in particular more about his attire, his racing leathers, colour coordinated. And Tony Palmer spoke to Robert Holden about his garb.
Robert, yet another set of new leathers. How many sets of leathers have you had in the last 5 years of racing?
Probably about 7 or 8. I've got quite a few now.
How come you get so many sets of leathers?
My wife makes them.
So while you were running around in the wet at Pukekohe last week, she was at home sewing more.
Yeah, she not only made my set, she made about 3 other sets for some other people as well. So it's been quite good lately, but I don't know whether I trust a new set at Wanganui or not. Usually when I put a new set on, I'm going down the road, but I went down the road yesterday, so I figured that's it for the weekend and I'll stay on now.
Didn't you have a little problem at Manfield a while ago with some new leathers?
Yeah, I managed to get 2 races out of those though. It was the second race when I fell off on them, so that's not too bad.
Perhaps you could explain to us a little about why bike riders run with leathers on and how much protection they afford you.
Yeah, well, I'll show my other set. I fell off in this set last year at the 6th hour, and Joanne has since put a new back in them, had a new arm, and just various patches all over. They just save so much skin, like I've got no skin missing anywhere, and the leathers do all the work, like they're just worth every penny. And without them, I think there'd be a lot of riders walking around with bits and pieces missing all over.
So you can actually afford to crash so long as you get off the bike the right way?
Yeah, like usually if it's, as long as you don't hit anything, you're fairly safe. Like I've fallen off probably a couple of times over 100 mile an hour, and you just wait till you've stopped sliding and stand up. And it's usually only your leathers that take a pounding. You usually got no skin missing.
As well as the leathers, you have some padding inside them?
Yeah, they've got shoulder pads, elbow pads, and pads on the hip. So where the main points of where you're going to hit, they take most of the abrasions away.
having a wife that sews leathers means you can be colour coordinated. Does that mean a lot to you when you're riding out there? Does it matter how good you look?
Well, I think so. When I first got the bike a couple of weeks ago, we looked at it, and the blue leathers in the bike didn't really match. We saw a few photos, and Joanne says, well, I think we'll have to have a new set that, that match the bike, so that's what we've had.
So it's a fashion show here?
Yeah, I think so. I think anything is like it's professional image you put forward, and I think if you're colour coordinated with the bike, the whole team and everything looks a lot nicer.
Who's your major opposition today in the senior production?
I think Bob. He's riding better than I've ever seen him ride for a long time, and he was really flying yesterday. Like I just couldn't peg him back. Hopefully, with I've got a new tyre and stuff on for today, and I'll be trying a lot harder today, being the second day, and I hope I can beat him. But he's riding very, very well at the moment.
We were actually talking about that in commentary yesterday. That Bob Toomey certainly does seem to be riding better than I've ever seen him before. He really has come of age.
Yeah, he has. I've never seen Bob round Wanganui particularly ride like he is at the moment, and there's no real team orders between the two of us. It's just every man for himself. The thing is with Bob, and he's the same with me, we know how each other ride. We don't get dirty with each other, but we also don't give an inch. Like, it's really close, but it's good fun.
So you're telling me that it's not a Wellington Motorcycles team?
It is when we stood here, but it's not when we get out there.
Welcome back live to Wanganui, where they're on the warm-up lap for the Suzuki Masters Leg 3. Robert Holden getting the win from Brian Morrison and Bob Toomey in the first race today. They'll come around and form up on the grid this time. And perhaps, Joanne, you'd like to explain just a little about what Suzuki Masters is about.
Similar as I was explaining yesterday, Tony, the Suzuki Masters is sponsored by Suzuki New Zealand, who've had a long-standing involvement with production racing in New Zealand. This class is similar to the Cars Formula Ford class, and represents the national distributor effort to encourage more production racing. It's a chance for these guys to have another production race, of course. But the result we see here is a lot more people becoming involved, having the chance to have more rides on these big Suzukis, and we're treated to some of the biggest big ball production fields that we've seen in New Zealand for many, many years.
It certainly provides exciting racing, and we've had the duels up front.
And the crunch point is, of course, that with Robert Holden standing on 27 points and Bob Toomey on 25, that's a difference of only 2 points, and the difference between a win and getting 15 points and second place getting 12 points is 3 points. So the winner out of these two, between Holden and Toomey, is the leader of the 3 races.
Away in the Suzuki Masters Leg 3. Look out for letter N, number 3, and letter R.
And it's Morrison who takes the lead. Brian Morrison in front now on letter N. And you can see Toomey back in 3rd place, Holden in 5th.
Terry Fitzgerald up in 2nd place at this early stage. Robert Holden has moved up, by the looks of it, to 4th place behind Bob Toomey, and then Robbie Dean behind him.
In between Robert and Robbie Dean is Napier rider Ricky Henry.
And this is just the break that Morrison needs, maybe to get a bit of an advantage over Toomey. Toomey up into 2nd place already. Holden still back in 4th.
Now this is a little bit of a handicap for Robert Holden, having not got a particularly good start. He's managed to work his way up. He'll be in 3rd place very shortly as he zips under on the bridge. A manoeuvre that he's done a couple of times very well today.
But we saw earlier that Morrison can do the lap times that Toomey and Holden can do, but he couldn't win the race. Now he's got the advantage. He's out in front. Toomey threatening, right sitting on his shoulder. Morrison looks over his left shoulder, sees that Toomey's right there.
And remember, the men in 2nd and 3rd, number 3 Bob Toomey and letter R Robert Holden, are the Wellington Motorcycles team, as Toomey has gone past Morrison. And Robert Holden looking to get past him as well. That wide line, getting a quicker drive out of the corner. He's in front. Morrison didn't really know which way he went.
But Morrison tries to get back at him and tries to go underneath, but Holden holds the advantage and now gets a better drive out of the corner to a secure 2nd place.
I think that's the comparative experience on this circuit showing. Robbie Dean up to 4th place. So Bob Toomey, Robert Holden, Brian Morrison, Robbie Dean. And here on number 140 is Simon Crafar from the North Shore, a youngster on the way up who's competing in this race on a GSXR 750. The 750 class is decided separately than the 1100, but they run in the same race. He and Phil Payne at the head of the points table.
Directly in front of Simon is young Alan Romans from Christchurch, having a little trouble getting to grips with this 1100 in this particular race.
140, the 750. Simon Craver doing very well to be up this close to the 1100s. Bob Toomey, the race leader. Robert Holden second. Brian Morrison third. Robbie Dean fourth.
Morrison seems to have lost touch a little bit from the two Wellington Motorcycles men, and Toomey coming under increasing pressure from Holden as we watch number 5, Robbie Dean. There goes Toomey, number 3.
I wonder if Brian Morrison has lost just a little confidence after his spill a little earlier on. He had a second to Robert Holden and was challenging quite strongly in many parts of the race. He got the lead initially, but it didn't take these two long to get past him.
And Holden now in superb confident style. He's all over Toomey. Now he dives up the inside to take the lead, even though Toomey can get a better drive out of the corner, and he does so. Well done, Bob Toomey. A really good piece of riding. I didn't think he could do it from there, but he dove back underneath Holden, and Holden once more gets back into front. So that's 3 lead changes in 3 corners.
Robert Holden shutting the gate just a little on Bob Toomey. Brian Morrison making some minor advantage from the dice up front. He's in 3rd place, and he caught up just a little as Robert Holden and Bob Toomey were dicing then. But I imagine that as they get going, they'll walk away just a little from Brian Morrison in 3rd place. So confident of these two Wellington Motorcycles riders. Holden in as good a form as we've ever seen him. Bob Toomey really riding superbly this season. Brian Morrison, the Scot, who has given them all a good run for their money, keeping them honest, but seemingly not able to tussle with the front two. Robbie Dean catching up in 4th place. Now Robert Holden starting to pull just a slight gap on Bob Toomey, about 10 metres between them. And Robbie Dean definitely catching Brian Morrison.
Morrison getting a bit of a sideways slide coming out of that right-hander there. Maybe his back tyre, having a little bit of problem with adhesion in his back tyre there, Tony.
No, he had a little spill earlier on. Robbie Dean still catching a little bit in 4th place. And a good battle going on 5th, 6th and 7th. Here's Simon Craper on the 750. Not terribly far behind them. Jeff McLaren on number 88. That's a 750 as well. So McLaren and Simon Craper having a good battle. Covering the race overall. And the leaders at this stage, still Robert Holden, Bob Toomey chasing his tail, and Brian Morrison dropping back just a little in 3rd place. If Morrison drops back at all, he's going to drop back into the clutches of Robbie Dean, who's in 4th place. Having a look there as Dean doesn't seem to have made any impression on the last lap or so.
And as you're watching these bikes, don't forget these are production motorcycles with production tyres, exactly as you can walk down to your local dealer and buy, and they're lapping every bit as fast as the Grand Prix machines do. It's an incredible thought that you can now go out and buy a motorcycle that's as fast as almost the top Grand Prix machinery.
And amazing also, Peter, that with currency changes and fluctuations and various market forces, they're actually dropping in price in the last couple of years. Still Robert Holden holding off Bob Toomey. These two pulling away just slightly now from Brian Morrison. There's Morrison back in your picture. Robbie Dean behind him, so a fairly big gap opening up between 3rd and 4th as well. There's Robbie Dean coming through now. Holden and Toomey not quite as close as they were in the earlier race. In fact, the dice up front was between Brian Morrison and Robert Holden. Robert Holden coming out the winner and the overall leader. This is 1-2 in the series so far, Robert Holden and Bob Toomey. Only the 2 points between them.
But Toomey now getting back on terms again. Maybe Robert Holden eased off a little bit too much in the last couple of laps, and now Toomey's right on his tail. He's soon going to be close enough to stick a wheel inside Holden. And there's only 2 laps to go. The back marker's coming up.
Have no doubt whatever that he will stick a wheel up under Robert Holden if he can. These two so accustomed to running together that they trust every move.
Toomey looking for an inside line coming into the Rose Garden there, but there was just not enough room there. Wide line coming over the bridge here. Toomey keeping hold of it as honest as he can.
2 laps left as they come down this time. Back to white flag being held out. They're on the last lap now.
And Toomey right on Holden's tail, absolutely nothing in it. He's just got to come up with a plan that's going to put him in front.
This is the place.
Oh, and a big slide from Robert Holden. Obviously the rear tyre going away, and that's given Bob Toomey a bit of encouragement.
Bob Toomey sitting right on his tail and saw that slide will know that the tyre is perhaps deteriorating and that if there's any place he can catch him, he's got to try and do it here. Comes
Robert riding very defensively. Robert riding very defensively down into the Rose Garden there to keep Bob Toomey out, knowing that he's going to try that inside line. Just not enough room for him.
And surely the only thing Toomey can do is either get inside him coming over the bridge or try and squirt past this finish line. There's really no chance left for him now.
Watching as they come off the bridge, down the start-finish line, Robert Holden right up against the fence, just wins it by a couple of metres from Bob Toomey. 3rd place is Brian Morrison, and 4th place coming down, Robbie Dean. Waiting for the leaders of the 750 class to come round now. Here's Simon Crafer. Off the bridge and down to the start-finish line, keeping his points lead alive in the 750 section. But there's the winner from Wellington Motorcycles, Robert Holden, just beating his teammate Bob Toomey.
And it really was a great ride from Toomey there. He could have given up as Holden seemed to be getting away, but he stuck to his guns, and right down to the flag he was on Holden's tail. A really good ride from Toomey. He was right there. He could do the same lap times, and there's Holden's slide. Look at that vicious kick, and Robert comes right out of the saddle. Toomey's right on his tail, could do everything except cross the line in front of him.
He actually did well to control that as quickly as he did and to stay on line. Bob Toomey not able to make any great advantage from it. Probably his nerves were a bit jangly watching it that close in front of him.
He looks for a way down the inside, but Robert has that position covered. Then he's got to think again. And there really aren't too many chances left once you leave the Rose Garden. He's right on his tail. Look at that. It couldn't be any closer.
The only place he might have done it is coming over the bridge for the last time, but you notice that Robert Holden went relatively wide there, stuck his bike right up against the fence line.
Yeah, Robert's an experienced campaigner, really gave him no chance at all. Very fast over the bridge for the last time and used every inch of road. You watch Robert now. Every front wheel comes off the ground and he's still trying to get the bike turned. Every inch in the gutter, over the yellow-white line. There's absolutely no room there at all.
I think a less experienced rider might not have got the same kind of traction because they might have got off the gas momentarily with Robert Holden getting that close to the fence and the curb. But a good win for Robert Holden again over Bob Toomey, Brian Morrison 3rd, Robbie Dean 4th.
And here is the letter R, the 2 acknowledged Suzuki Masters around Wanganui. For this meeting anyway, Robert Holden, well done. Good dice. At one stage the lead changed 3 times in 3 corners, I think.
Yeah, we were having a real good go. Like, me and Bob just always seemed to end up together somewhere along the line, and we were both trying really hard. I couldn't tell you which way it was going to go for the last couple of laps. It was getting really good.
And what about that little incident we just saw in the last lap there, where you just about lost it somewhere on that last lap with the back wheel spinning away?
Yeah, I didn't really nearly lose it. Like, did that for about 4 laps in a row. I was just trying to get the drive on as hard as I could to pull a bit of a move on Bob, and just got the back end loose, but wasn't that bad. I've had worse.
Your wife actually suggested on air that you were riding somewhat defensively though through the last few corners as a consequence of that.
It's a lot harder to pass a bike that's sideways than is it straight on, so I think that helped a little bit.
All right, Robert, you've got now a 5-point lead in this Suzuki Masters Series. 3 more legs to go at Ruapuna over New Year. I guess you're looking forward to riding on the real racing circuit.
Yeah, I like Ruapuna, the new circuit. They've changed it a little bit over the back, and it's definitely be advantageous to the 1100s. And I'm really looking forward to it. I'm really enjoying the racing here, but I'm really looking forward to Ruapuna.
Right, Robert, we'll see you down there. Bob, Toomey, a word from you quickly just before we leave Wanganui for the moment. Did you think you might have had a chance there when Rob just about went sideways there?
Yeah, I thought I might have had a chance, but as he said, he was sideways and I had nowhere to go. I was trying to go around the outside a little bit, and I was a little bit taking it easy, quite cautious about it. I backed off a little bit in case he was going to go down. But Robert's fashion, he stays up all the time.
All right, we'll see you down south. Good luck down there.
Thanks.
So Robert Holden first and Bob Toomey second in the Suzuki Masters. And Robert Holden, rain clouds for all intents and purposes have gone away. A few people have got their shirts off and really taking in the rays. A magnificent day to watch some very good motorcycling action. Next on the card will be the 250cc production series. This will be leg 3 of that series. Still, the